everybody. Hi, Sam, are you online?
Okay, folks, if we can start getting ready to settle down, as soon as we put up the full agenda there, we can do the introduction. Welcome, everyone, to the last colloquium of 2020. The theme, we admit, is somewhat dramatic. South Africa's killing fields. But in the light of some information that I'd like to share with you, I'm quite sure that you can see why it's important. Firstly, why do we use such a dramatic title? Well, so many webinars and invitations going out to individuals, they decide what they will attend. And we've found by virtue of experience that the more dramatic it is, the more impactful it is, and therefore persons will attend. But more importantly, this made me think of the killing fields of Cambodia, which, if you recall, took place in 1975 to 1979, where about 2 million of their residents, the people were killed as a result of culling and the like, roughly 1/4 of their population. And interestingly, outside one of the memorial sites, one of the monuments, there's a phrase that says, "This serves as an educational tool to ensure that history never repeats itself." And if we reflect on where we are in South Africa, one definition of killing fields, it's the Free Dictionary, says it's a site of large-scale, often systematic killing. And unfortunately, as you saw there in the introductory video, our history in South Africa, whether it's 15,000 people that we kill or whether it's 25,000 according to MRC, the number is really unacceptable. Now, there are many things that we can't change, but there are many things that we can change. And therefore, one of the things that we will focus our attention on today is talking about that which affects every one of us, namely distracted while driving. But that's not all. We have collected a host of speakers. You will reflect on the agenda. And if I can just walk you through some of them. We have Leighton, who is especially skilled at speaking AA language. And he's going to share some important information with us. We have Miles LaRue, who runs the N3 toll concession, and he's got some helpful tips if you're traveling that route, what you could and should be doing. We're then going to move to, who's the next one over there? It's Amanda Kletter. You know, one of the things that we have noticed, the trauma that's associated with COVID, is what happens in the hospital. But there are other facets to what we should be looking at as far as our health and risk, and Amanda will be unpacking some of those over there as well. Then we're going to look at Johan Jong, who all of you, I'm sure, will know his website, and he's going to talk about it, Arrive Alive, and he's going to give some helpful tips. I overheard him on an interview with RSG a few moments ago, giving helpful information to listeners that they can apply during the festive season. Then we're going to go through to MJ Westhuizen, and we thought to include this because of the fact that we all go away, and yet sometimes some very basic things we neglect to take care of when we leave our homes. So MJ will be unpacking, and I've seen some of them, some really helpful tips that we can look at and implement before we take the trip to our destination. And then we're going to have Neo from Standard Bank. We know it's a time when people spend loads of money, much to their regret in January. So Neo, a business manager at Standard Bank, is going to give us some helpful tips as to what we can have a look at over there. And then finally, we're going to be announcing something that we would like to get the buy-in of everybody on our program today. And by the way, when you see the number of participants, that doesn't include those which are visiting on YouTube. Some companies don't have the means or allow Zoom to be used as a medium. So there are many others that are following us. Registration we saw in the region of 150. So we trust that if all the 150 buy into the pledge that we would like them to take, we will have a very successful festive season, and we will minimize the likelihood of you and I being a statistic. And then at the end, please, there's a note, your screen name, can you make sure it's the same as that which was on your registration? And the very important reason is we're going to give away some prizes. If you've just got a digital name, you are not going to qualify. So please put your full screen name on, and you may be the recipient of some really nice prizes. So let's kick off our session. We're going to ask Leighton Leighton Beard from the AA to talk to us about some information that will really benefit every motorist on the road. Leighton, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eugene. I really appreciate that. As Eugene said, my name is Leighton Beard and I am from the AA. Let me just get the screen up. There we go. I'm sure everybody can see this. Eugene, can you see this?
Yes, I can see.
Okay, beautiful. So thank you very much, Eugene, for giving us the opportunity to present today at your colloquium. And I think it's very aptly named The Killing Fields. I think when we look at the presentations that are coming, I beg your pardon, I think we will get a sense of exactly how bad the situation on our roads is in South Africa. The purpose of my speech today, my presentation today, is just to sketch a bit of background about where we are in terms of road safety in South Africa and to give some idea statistically of what the situation looks like and to compare it to what we are looking at in other parts of the world, and then also to pose some questions about whose responsibility it is to actually deal with these issues. I'd just like to make a note up front that the statistics that I'm using and the statistics that I'm referring to, particularly in relation to South Africa, are from the Road Traffic Management Corporation. Now, there may be some people who question these figures. There may be people who say that these figures are too low, that they need to be adjusted. But these are the official figures that we get from the Road Traffic Management Corporation. They are the official figures for South Africa, and that's the reason we use them. Unless otherwise stated, there are some figures, obviously, that we get from the World Health Organization and from international associations, and where we do that, they are obviously included. So let me move on. This slide is really just to give an idea of where we are in terms of population in South Africa and in terms of where we fit in the rest of Africa. Now, we include the slide just to give an idea of the volumes of people we are talking about. And it's very important to give this context because I think when we look at the 54 countries and we look at the spread of people, we find that very many people are obviously living in cities, and this creates a transport issue. So the slide is really just intended to give a snapshot of where we are as South Africa in terms of our population, in terms of where people are living in cities, and in terms of the size of our country. And you will see South Africa is a very big country. We have a very sophisticated road network. And because we have the sophisticated road network and because we have very many cars, this does pose certain issues. But we'll get to that in a minute. And I won't be very long, Eugene. I know that you said I shouldn't be all doom and gloom, and I will try not to be, but I think let's let the numbers speak for themselves. So Africa is the least motorized continent, and yet it comprises 62% of the bottom 30% of all countries in terms of road deaths. And that's a very significant statistic. When you look at the green line there, South Africa has on average 26 deaths per 100,000. You may be asking, but why don't I have more updated figures? Unfortunately, these are the most updated figures that we have. This comes from the World Health Organization. They're based on figures provided by the RTMC and the Department of Transport, and they are updated annually. So for 2020, we should be getting the 2019 figures, hopefully towards the end of this month. But I think what's very significant there is if you look at a country like, or you look at places like the UK, where they have 3 deaths per 100,000, that's very important. And Australia as well, 6 deaths per 100,000. We have, and this is a very significant, well, I'll go back to that, but this is very important. We have more deaths over the festive season in South Africa than the UK and Australia have their entire year. And that's something that you've got to bear in mind when you talk about road safety. When we look at what MasterDrive has done in terms of the presentation of this colloquium, calling it the killing fields, that's exactly what we have in our country. And we mustn't shy away from that. We need to acknowledge that because that is part of the process, we believe, in terms of dealing more effectively with the issue of road safety. This is just a breakdown of the road fatalities from 2010 to 2019. And you can see that it's quite a stable number over the period. You look at 2010, there were 13,968 deaths on our road in 2010, and then in 2019, 12,503. The numbers are not reducing. When we look at campaigns, the 50 by 30 campaign is a good example where the United Nations wants to reduce by half the number of road deaths by 2030. You can see that quite clearly South Africa is not on a good trajectory in terms of reaching that goal. And that is something that is very important because we are signatories to international protocols and declarations, and we need to achieve these. We need to be working towards that. And the question then is how are we actually getting to that? How are we making sure that our roads are safer so that we can reduce by 50 the number of deaths on our roads by 2030? Over the last decade, 134,000 deaths, 133,000 deaths, 8.3 million crashes. What's very significant about these numbers is that last number, which is 3.5% of GDP. And when you look at the cost of crashes and you look at the breakdown, now this is a graph that was presented and done by the Road Traffic Management Corporation in 2015. It hasn't been updated, but if we extrapolate those numbers to 2020, we're probably looking at around about 190 billion rand. 190 billion rand per year is the cost of crashes in South Africa. Now, let that sink in. That's a huge amount of money. It's not an M, it's a B for billion. And that gives you a very clear indication of why road safety is important. If we can reduce road crashes, if we can reduce road deaths, we can bring that 190 billion rand figure down, and we can utilize that money for more important things in our society. And that's the point with this. This is why we show this graph, because it sometimes shocks people when they see that this is the cost of the crashes in our country. It's a huge amount of money, and it can be spent better on different things. Now, whose responsibility is road safety? Is it the government's responsibility? Is it the transport department, the health department? Is it an issue of policing? Is it the manufacturers? Is it their duty of care to the customer, or is it actually the motoring public who have a personal responsibility to themselves, to their family, and to the greater population? When we look at government and we look at the departments that are involved, road deaths as a transport priority is actually pretty low, unfortunately. When we look at this, we see that there are very many other issues that the government needs to deal with, the transport department needs to deal with. They are looking at issues around PRASA. They are looking at issues around taxi violence. They are looking at issues around SAA. They are looking at infrastructure issues. Are they looking at road safety? No. When we look, I'm going to gloss over this slide. This is basically telling you how far people are walking. The point with this is that transport has got other issues. They've got other problems to worry about. When we look at road deaths as a policing priority, we see that road deaths are very low on this graph. They've got to deal with more important things. The police have got to deal with drug crime. They've got to deal with burglaries and drunk driving. So these are other issues that they've got to deal with. Road deaths are not a priority for them. As a health priority, we know in South Africa that the Department of Health and all the other provincial departments of health have got many other problems that they've got to deal with. They've got to look at things like TB and heart disease. Obviously, now we've got to look at this issue of COVID-19 and coronavirus and how to stop that. And we know that that's been a huge focus of the Department of Health and the provincial departments of health. So road deaths, again, is very low on that list. So then we need to ask, is it the manufacturer's responsibility? Do they have a duty of care to the public? And certainly in our minds, they do. The government, by the way, I'm not saying that government doesn't have a duty to motorists. All we are saying is that their attention is focused on other areas. In terms of the manufacturers, the original equipment manufacturers, the OEMs, do they have a duty of care? They do. They need to produce safer vehicles, and they need to ensure that important improvements are done on vehicles. They need to include ESC, electronic stability control. It may be known to by many of you by different names. They need to be looking at anti-lock braking systems. We need to be including airbags in vehicles. And the inclusion of these safety technologies, these life-saving technologies in vehicles, is in our mind a level of safety awareness that actually is very encouraging to us. They are working in road prevention, road safety campaigns. Many of the OEMs are involved in these campaigns, which is equally encouraging. And there have been many commendable developments by the OEMs, besides the technology that they're including in vehicles, and besides making the body shells of vehicles safer, they're also involved in many road safety programs, which is, as I say, very encouraging. Excuse me. I beg your pardon. The AA produces an annual report called the Entry-Level Vehicle Safety Report, and this looks at the safety features that are available on vehicles in South Africa. And we look at the brochures of the vehicles and see what safety features are included in that. 18% of the vehicles that we looked at, and this is looking at the figures from our report that we did in 2020, and we had 27 vehicles that are entry-level vehicles that priced at 200,000 Rand or below. 18% of those vehicles didn't have any airbags, 40% only had one airbag, and 18% had ABS. Very encouraging, 83% of those vehicles had ABS. So this is very encouraging, right? Then we need to look at the motoring public and the personal responsibility that they have in terms of ensuring our roads are safer. And this is where I think it becomes very, very critical. And this is something that we at the AA try to focus on quite a lot. As I said earlier, South Africa alone has a higher death toll over the summer holiday than either Australia or the UK have for a full year. And you've got to ask yourself the question, but why is that? Why do countries like the UK and Australia, which have similar population sizes to South Africa, specifically, well, in the case of the UK, obviously a lot higher, why do they have so much fewer road deaths over the period? And in our mind, there are two issues that come to the fore. The first, and Eugene, I think, will support this, is that the drivers are a lot more educated and trained in driving, even from a young age. There's a lot of intensive driver education in schools and among children of a young age, which is something that we would like to see replicated in a place like South Africa. But there are also ongoing continuous awareness campaigns throughout the year of drivers, of children, of people who are using roads. And that's very critical for us. And that's where I think that our motoring public in South Africa needs to be involved more in. 95% of accidents are caused by human error. That is a figure that comes from the Road Traffic Management Corporation. And that speaks very directly to the reasons why we have so many crashes and so many fatalities on our roads. And when you look at human error, we are talking about things like distracted driving, people who are using mobile devices while they're driving, people who are eating while they're driving, people who are applying makeup while they're driving, people who are looking out the window, people who are turning around to speak to children in the back seats while they're driving, people who are not focusing on the road. That's one element of human error. The other element is people who are not obeying the rules of the road. They're crossing over solid white lines. They're using the yellow lane to pass vehicles. They are speeding. There's drunk driving or drug driving that is occurring. People are not wearing their seatbelts while they're driving. So these are all issues related to human error. And these are things that can be fixed. This is something that as motorists, we need to improve ourselves. So we need to be saying to ourselves, well, we're not going to be distracted while we're driving. We aren't going to speed. We aren't going to overtake on solid white lines. We are going to play our role by obeying the rules of the road. Excuse me, I know my voice is very croaky. I don't have coronavirus. It's just a frog in the throat. There is a problem with personal responsibility and with drivers taking responsibility for their own actions. And the reason that there is a problem is because of this. And that is that everybody thinks that they are excellent drivers, that they are perfect drivers, and that the problem really is with the other guy. The problem is with the other person on the road. So to give you an indication here, if you look at the driving in the rain, 54% of people say that they are above average or near perfect when it comes to driving in the rain, but that 38% of the population isn't. And that's a really problematic slide. Because that indicates that people believe that their ability is better than everybody else's. And for us, that's an issue, because we need to get to a situation in South Africa, if we are to stop the carnage on our roads, where people take collective responsibility for their actions. And this slide clearly indicates that we are not. We are always saying to ourselves that we are better. I mean, the last one is while I'm traveling on highways, we've got 77% of people believe that they are above average or near perfect while driving on highways. And quite clearly, that is not the case. When you look at the figures that we have, they don't bear this out. Eugene, I know I will be wrapping up shortly. Sorry, thank you very much. I will be wrapping up very quickly. I'll go through the slides very quickly. It's the other guy's problem, and that slide just, I think, reaffirms that. So who needs to step up? It's not a priority for government. They're making strides as OEMs, but more needs to be done, and it's not the motoring public's problem. So what now? This is to illustrate that we need safer roads in our country. And when I speak about safer roads, I'm actually talking about the surface of the road. We need safer vehicles in our country. We need safe users, and safe users include motorists, people on bicycles, people on motorbikes. We're talking about pedestrians, we're talking about people in vehicles, and we're talking about passengers. And we need better and more effective post-crash intervention. So in our mind, we need better education. We need education, 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 and we bang this drum continuously. Drivers need to take more responsibility for their actions. We need better law enforcement. There are many reports that have been done about the need for a doubling in the size of traffic law enforcement, about more effective law enforcement. We need harsher punishment for offenders. People need to learn by example. So if you've got a youngster who's learning to drive with you, you've got to teach them by example. And obviously we need better roads. The last slide, Eugene, before I go, when I spoke earlier about the 190 billion rand that we are spending on crashes every year, that figure, or the 8 million cars that are involved in crashes every year, if we were to turn that money around, we could build more schools, we could buy more hospitals, we could pay for bursaries. I mean, there are so many things we could do with that money rather than spending it on crashes. And as South Africans and as active citizens, we need to play our role and do better on the roads. I think that it's very important that we hold colloquiums such as this. And thank you again to Eugene and his team for putting this together, because we need to spread the message that road safety is not the other guy's responsibility. It's not the government's responsibility. As motorists and as road users, it's our responsibility. Thank you very much. And sorry for going over time, Eugene.
Thank you, Leighton. It's a problem I think all of us have. We get very passionate about what we want to share. And before we realize it, our time is really gone. Just for those who've been asking, there will be questions at the end. We've asked Leighton and the whole team to just stay behind and we can table some questions for them. But I just hope, Leighton, if we can save something of that 190 billion, it doesn't go to helping SAA. All right, that's my only wish. Let's now move on through to our next discussion, Miles from N3TC. And I'm quite sure what I've heard, he is going to be empowering road users with a lot of information that will help all of us. Miles, over to you.
Thank you, Eugene. Can I share my screen then?
Yes. Share your screen, Miles.
Can you see it now?
Not yet.
Sorry. I'm trying to share it.
Would you like Nishani to put it up?
So one more try. Sorry, I do think I'm having a problem there.
Okay, let's get Nishani to put up the screen, and then you can just indicate to her when you want her to move forward on the various ones.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can I go?
Fire away.
Thank you, Eugene. Good morning to everybody that's attending this colloquium, and hopefully we can give you a little bit of information on lessons learned from the perspective of the entry toll concession. Next page. My talk is really about the background, which is the introduction and the situation. And then I want to look at how we can deal with the problem, and then what should we be doing as prevention in terms of planning and preparedness. Next slide. Just an introduction to Entry Toll Concession. It's a single-purpose company handling the design, construction, finance, and operation and maintenance of the Entry Toll route. It's a 30-year concession up until from November 99. It covers the route, the entry route from Sadara to Heidelberg. It's 415 kilometers. It links the industrial heartland in Gauteng to the country's biggest and busiest port in Durban. And obviously, Gauteng is the biggest source of holiday makers for the coast. So there's all of those people also using the Entry Toll route. It manages approximately 60,000 transactions on a daily basis. Next slide. As I said, it's 415 kilometers of a national road standard. 50% of the route is dual divided and 50% is 4-lane undivided. The entry passes through a flat, rolling or mountainous terrain, which has its own challenges. It passes through peri-urban and rural farming situation. The seasonal conditions can be rain and fog or clear weather, and obviously the rain and fog is problematic if you're a road user. The annual average daily traffic varies between 11,000 and 38,000 vehicles per day, depending on which section of the route. Down at the Sadara end, we have about 38,000 vehicles per day. In the middle of the route, we're running at about 11,000 vehicles per day. Of this annual average daily traffic, 35% are heavy vehicles, and approximately 10% of them are overloading on average. Next slide. Thank you. Just an example of the dual carriageway on the left, 4 lanes, 2 lanes per direction, and on the right-hand side, a single carriageway or undivided 4-lane section of the N3. Next slide. What is the situation? Just a brief look at the situation on the Entry Toll route. In 2019, on average, there were 30 crashes every 10 days. Fatal crashes, 2.5 fatal crashes every 10 days. Fatalities, 3.5 fatalities every 10 days. These numbers are obviously substantially lower than the national average of these kind of statistics, but it's still too high to be acceptable. Next page. As Leighton also mentioned in his presentation, what is the contributory factors to the crashes? If we look at light vehicles, the gray section of the pie, 69% are probably due to human error or human mistakes on the part of the driver of the light vehicle. 10% are objects on the road, 11% is the vehicle itself. So the human factor is the big problem. Are we capable of driving? Are we competent to drive? Or are we aggressive? Are we bad drivers as a consequence as a population? With regard to objects on the road, the Entry Toll Concession picks up or clears on average 400 tire carcasses and 400 objects in addition to that. So there's a lot of possible or potential crash opportunities with objects on the road, especially at night. Unfortunately, the condition of the vehicles is such that tires are blown out on a regular basis. And this is a big problem for us. We try to get these things out of the way in time, but we can't be there every minute of the day, and you often have crashes as a consequence. If we can have a look at the next slide for heavy vehicles. This is even more alarming. 83% of the driver is probably the cause of the crash. 13% is the vehicle or the condition of the vehicle. If you look at weather, weather is a small 1%. More than 80% of our crashes on the N3 toll route occur in clear weather. So weather is not necessarily to blame, despite some pretty severe weather conditions that we do experience. Next slide, please. Okay, punch once. N3TC is trying to have a road that has mobility, safety, and convenience as its core. Next punch. In order to achieve this, we have education, we have an information database, we have a route control center, we have route services, we have a up-to-date computer system, and obviously engineering plays an important role. Punch again. And that forms part of our incident management system. Okay, next slide, please. Solving the problem. You can't measure the problem if you don't have data. So we have an information system called IRIS. It captures all the data about all the crashes we have, all the incidents, the dropped loads, the broken down vehicles, all of that sort of information, so we can monitor and see where the problem is. Engineering compliance, we need to make sure that the road is built to the standards that South African National Road Agency expects of us. This is a national route and must be to the highest standard we can achieve. Education, critical, as Leighton has also mentioned. Education. We target the road user. We target the enforcement agencies. We target the emergency services. Make sure that they have the tools that they need to address any problems. With regard to enforcement, N3TC has a public-private partnership with one of the local authorities to provide enforcement on a section of the N3. We provide training, for example, dangerous goods training or operations of specialized equipment, such as the alcohol testing equipment. We conduct debriefings of any crash that happens on the route, of serious crash. We conduct what's called a PIA, a debriefing of the incident, to see where we can do better when we manage crashes. This is an after exercise. Truck wellness days. Can a truck be well? Well, probably the driver needs to be well. The truck needs to be roadworthy. So we have wellness days that covers both the truck condition and the condition of the driver. So we try and help the drivers to take care of their health. A healthy driver hopefully can deal with any problem on the route. If he's sick, well, already there's a distraction. Alcohol and drug screening. We help the enforcement agencies to manage the screening of alcohol and drugs. Drug screening is a fairly new exercise, and is obviously a lot more complex than the alcohol. Alcohol, you only need one test. Drug screening, you need at least 5 or 6 tests to detect any drugs. On the route, we have what's called route services. The route is broken down into 6 sections, and we have a vehicle in every section that patrols the route to handle crash scene safety, to help stranded clients, to watch out where there's any fences that have been damaged so that the cattle don't stray onto the road. We also try and keep stray animals off the road, and that's the job of the route services guys. This is a 24/7 service, 365 days a year. These are guys who are trained in basic first aid, dangerous goods handling, management, scene safety management. So they're highly trained people, and they're there all the time trying to help. Communications. Communications is like education, critical. We have a route control center, which operates our CCTV network, our variable message signs, and our communication with the social media. At the bottom of the presentation, you can see we have our website, we have our helpline, we have our Twitter handle, and our Facebook handle for those who need to access it. Next slide, please. Just an example of our variable message sign. Key rule, keep left. It's amazing how many people don't obey that simple rule. We all find ourselves driving in the right-hand lane. Next slide, please. Okay, the important part of this colloquium today is what can we do? How can we plan and prepare? Well, from the perspective of the road management, that's N3TC, we need to make sure that the road surface is in a condition expected by South African National Road Agency. It's a national route, so it needs to be of a high condition. The signage needs to be of a good standard. We make sure the signs are clean. We make sure they have the correct reflectivity. We do night inspections to make sure the signage is visible at night. We have variable message signs, and this we use to communicate with the road users to try and warn them of anything up ahead. Or if it's just everything is fine, like a general message, a single click saves lives. Please buckle up, those kind of messages. The road furniture, is the road furniture good? By road furniture, I mean the guardrails or the road studs, commonly called cat's eyes. You'll be surprised at how many guardrails bear the brunt of a lot of this carnage on our roads. We're forever repairing guardrails. There's a team on the road all the time fixing guardrails. And then we have our route control center, which I mentioned earlier. It's a 24/7 call center. It links the emergency services with the scene of the crash or whatever incident that is happening on the route. Next slide, please. Planning and preparedness, the other services. On the route, there are these the triple C's, the communication control centers. For example, in Maritzburg Grace Hospital is a triple C. There's one at Escort called Alpha Control. What would happen at the scene of any crash is they would report to the CCC, who would then make contact with the various emergency services and send out the fire engine and the ambulance to the scene. We need to have a competent law enforcement arm. That's the RTI and SAPS. We have them on duty as well. They're all over the N3, especially over the festive season. Emergency services, are the ambulances and the tow services ready to handle anything that happens? I know the tow services don't have a very good reputation, but they are essential. And if they do their job, they are extremely competent and capable. And then there's the other road users, the motorists on the route. We need to be able to make sure that they are ready. And we'll talk about that just now. Next slide, please. The road user, this is what I want to talk about. First and foremost, it's the driver's responsibility to take care of his own. If you're driving a vehicle, you've got other people in your vehicle with you, you are responsible for their well-being because you are in control. If you don't control that vehicle,
we've got a minute to write.
Sorry, okay. Don't leave it to chance. Driver wellness is critical. You must be well. The condition of your vehicle, please make sure that your vehicle is in top condition, that the tires are good. Defensive driving. We have too many aggressive drivers on our route. And don't forget to plan your trip. It's a 6-hour journey between Johannesburg and Durban. That's a long time. Please make sure you're well prepared. Next slide, please. Make sure that you tap into all available information. I'll just quickly touch on this. We have a helpline, 0800 63 43 57. You're welcome to phone and find out what is happening on the route. Are there crashes? What's the weather like? You can subscribe to Telegram, and you can subscribe to our Twitter or our Facebook. Avoid false information. Use verified sources such as Arrive Alive, AA, Traffic SA, industry leaders to get your information before you make the trip. Next slide, please. If you call our helpline, we can give you information on traffic, weather, warnings about crashes, and emergency updates. So I'm going quickly, Eugene. Next slide, please. That's the end of my presentation. Just imagine if you could ask this or answer this. It is now safe to drive a car as to fly an airplane. What a challenge. Wouldn't that be good if we could have a situation in South Africa where it is as safe to drive a car as to fly an airplane? Next slide, please. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please drive alive and arrive safely this festive season. And please remember our 0800 entry help number. If you need help, please call it. Thank you, Eugene.
Miles, thank you very much. As I indicated to Leighton, it's very difficult sometimes to keep to the time we're allotted, and I'm quite sure the audience are respectful of the wonderful information you shared. And for those who are asking, will this information be available? Yes, please, we are copying this, we are recording this, so the whole presentation will be available. We often get to see the hospital from the wrong side. So let's see what it's like when someone who is in charge of the trauma unit shares their experiences. Amanda, we look forward to your presentation. Thank you very much.
I'm just making sure. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
So good morning, everybody, and greetings from Cape Town. We've got a beautiful day, but we are all COVIDed out down here. So I hope you're all keeping yourself safe wherever you are. So basically, I wanted to just chat a little bit about trauma injury prevention and what was and what is. There's so much original research at the moment about trauma injury prevention throughout globally. So we're looking at home hazards, we're looking at driving accidents. The American Association for the Surgery of Trauma Prevention Committee, they did a whole paper on the impact of community violence and intimate partner violence, but also related to accidents on the road, and then the burden of trauma at a district hospital in the Western Cape province. So there's a lot of studies that have been done regarding trauma injury prevention and the need for it. So what I did was I just looked at BRICS so that we can compare ourselves with other countries, also middle income countries like ourselves. So if you look at Brazil, the leading injuries they experience there are falls and motor vehicle crashes. And this was a pediatric trauma primary survey performance among surgical and non-surgical pediatric providers. If we look at Russia, if you see again that the statistics there show that the highest incidence of injuries, motor vehicle crashes. India, injuries in India, if you look there, they have, there's one death every 4 minutes. Drunken driving is one of the leading causes of road fatalities. So a lot of it's quite similar to what we see in South Africa. In China, unintentional suffocation, which I thought was an interesting one, but also traffic accidents, drowning. And then we look at South Africa. So traffic incidents and violence is one of the highest things that we actually see coming through our emergency departments every year. And I'm focusing mainly on children and what is happening with them on the roads and what injuries they experience most often. So it's drowning, falls, choking, poisoning, and then road traffic accidents. And if we look at road traffic accidents, it's people failing to keep in their proper lane, unsafe, illegal U-turns, disregarding a stop sign, intoxicated drivers. They drove into oncoming traffic at the wrong, in the wrong lane, speed too high for their circumstances, driver fatigue, turning right in front of oncoming traffic, and overtook in the face of oncoming traffic. These are things I think any of us that commute daily in any one of our provinces sees this on a daily basis. If we look at the annual global road crash statistics, they're saying 1.3 million people die in road crashes each year. And that's an average of 3.2 deaths per day. That is significant. And an additional 20 to 50 million people are injured or disabled. I saw someone asking a question earlier about, how many people are disabled or just injured from the crashes. 20 to 50 million globally. More than half of all road traffic deaths occur among people aged 15 to 44. For ages 15 to 29, it's the leading cause of death. And 2 to 14 is the second leading cause of death. Those are quite scary statistics. And we're actually seeing, interestingly, in a lot of our emergency departments, that actually the average age of the person coming in injured is actually becoming a lot higher. So as Netcare, we introduced some trauma injury prevention booklets that MasterDrive has been involved with. We're trying to teach children because we believe that if you educate the young people in our communities, then hopefully they will develop good habits into adulthood and then share it with their children and so on and so on. So we look at the epidemiology coming out of our units where we see, how many people have pedestrian accidents, how many children are burnt. And that's why we develop these books so that we can actually address what we're seeing in our emergency departments. And thank you, MasterDrive, for assisting us with that. I just want to touch slightly on cell phones. It's illegal to use your phone while driving, but we did a study between two of our level ones, a few years ago now, where we actually monitored their cell phone usage for 7 days. We did it as a challenge. And it was actually quite scary to see how many people battled to drive without actually using their cell phone. And at the end of the day, when we got together after the challenge, there was nobody that had missed a call that was so important. That was so important that they had to take it. Sorry, I think someone just needs to mute. If you look at the image on the left, I mean, isn't that what we see nowadays? We're all on electronic.
Amanda, just hang on. Somebody who's got their mic on, would they please just kill it so that Amanda can carry on? Okay, go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you. So yes, this distracted parenting, it is such a huge contributor to children having injuries, and we're seeing more and more of it. We get home and you've got emails that you have to answer, you've got your cell phone ringing off, and we're so busy answering our electronic devices and focusing on that where's the toddler? They're crawling out the door, going towards the swimming pool. So I think it's just something that we need to be cognizant of, is the fact that we are becoming distracted parents. Another item I would just like to touch on is gate safety. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in South Africa, there's no legislation around gates. So basically, when you buy a house and you have to have an electrical certificate, you make sure that everything's safe. But with gates, there's no legislation. So we don't check if there's a stopper on the gate. If the device works, that it stops when someone stands in front of it. And these are critical. We're seeing more children and some adults coming in, on a daily basis with steel gates falling on them. And it's a lot of weight on a gate like that. Okay, the presentation doesn't seem to be going forward now. Not sure why. There we go. So another thing we sort of look at is just water watchers. And I'm just touching on these because this is what we're seeing in our emergency departments. And the reason I feel it's pertinent now is because of COVID, we have, our beds are being taken up very quickly. So when we have any injuries from a trauma-related incident, whether it's motor vehicle accidents, drownings, pedestrian accidents, we have limited beds to actually admit these people to, because we're in a pandemic at the moment. And I think people need to be so aware of the other issues and keep themselves safe so that we can actually accommodate the people that need to be admitted to hospital. So the Water Watchers card was just a suggestion that when you have people around the pool, the weather's getting warmer now, someone just holds a card, and that means you're responsible for the children in the swimming pool at that time. And then when you need to leave the area, you actually hand the card over to someone else. So it gives them that sense of responsibility. I've chatted about gates already, just explaining that there's no legislation. So then just quickly to touch on injury prevention or safety, we've always spoken about injury prevention, but safety is actually a bit of a different topic. Now that we have a pandemic, we need to be aware that we've got to be keeping one another safe from medical concerns as well. So at the moment in South Africa, we've got double the world average of child road fatalities, double the world average. I mean, that is an incredible figure. We have a lack of safe public transport. We know that children in taxis going to and from school, they do not wear safety belts. 1,300 children are killed every year. And minibus taxis, unfortunately, we know they're often reckless, unroadworthy, and they speed. So, what are we doing about this? If we want to teach our children things about using public transport safely, we need to encourage them. They have to wear face masks. You'll see in the middle of the image, they actually devised this face mask for children with a plastic piece in the center. And we all looked at it and we thought, well, this is actually great. It's good for people communicating with deaf children as well, because people often, they read lips. But the problem with these masks is it actually creates condensation on the inside of the mask, and then you're tempted to touch your face because of the water droplets. So they're not as good as we thought they were. Also, social distancing. The picture on the left was a case where I think there was 46 school children in one taxi. We need to know how our children are getting to school and ensure that they're safe getting there. We need to teach them about wearing masks and to encourage their friends to wear masks, because if the cool person wears a mask, then everybody else will. Social distancing. We're a society of people who are very friendly and we like to hug one another or shake hands. We've got to find different ways of doing that to keep one another safe. And we need to encourage children to use hand sanitizer. They touch so many things every day, getting in and out of the taxis or however they're getting to school. They touch other people's school bags, they go to the bathroom, they touch the door. So we just need to be cognizant of that and teach our children about it. I see you, Eugene. I'm going to wrap up now. So with our Netcare injury and safety program. We want to be looking at teaching children how to wash their hands correctly, new normal social distancing, teach them cough etiquette. And just my last slide is just about well-being. We're seeing a lot at the moment of COVID fatigue, where people are just worn out. They're tired of being isolated because we are human. We like to interact with other people. Children want to play with their friends. So I just want to say to everyone, just look after yourself. It's an act of self-love. We cannot fill from an empty cup. So you cannot help somebody else if you're not looking after yourself first. Thank you very much. Keep safe, everyone.
Amanda, thank you very much. We as an organization, and I personally have had the privilege of working with you over several years. And you know, when I think about yourself, I think about the AA Leighton there, and of course we'll get to Johan Jonke next from Arrive Alive. It epitomizes the quotation by Gandhi that said, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." So let's see what change we can effect over the next period of time. And with that, let's introduce Johan. He's also a good friend, and let's let him give us some helpful tips.
Yes, Eugene, let's see if I'm not used to all this technology stuff, but let's see how it goes. Thanks a lot for the introduction. I've always said I've got a face for radio and a voice for print, but let's see if we can make this interesting. What I wanted to discuss today is a little bit about the Arrive Alive website. Perhaps some facts about the Arrive Alive initiative or the website that people often do not understand. Also some of the stuff that we have been doing, the platforms we are using, and how we think we can improve on it. The Arrive Alive website was started in 2003 as a passion project of mine, having lost my parents in a road crash. And the Arrive Alive campaign started already in 1997, 1998 as a short-term project in KZN. And I asked myself at that stage, but what are we doing online to create awareness of road safety? And I thought that we would be able to share information. We would be able to create a decent information portal from where people can find information. Now, interestingly, as we all know, the internet has kind of exploded after that. Facebook started 2004, Twitter started 2006, and it's important for us to use all these portals to create awareness. Is it sometimes frustrating? You bet it is. Now, perhaps I need to explain why. The Arrive Alive website is only one of the mechanisms we can use to reduce road deaths. But globally, we always refer to the 4 E's required for reducing road deaths. And that is education, enforcement, engineering, and encouragement. Now, I believe in South Africa, enforcement is by far the biggest part of what is required for safer roads. Rooting out corruption, rooting out bribery. It is actually sad when we sometimes refer to, we hear people say that I'm ignoring you like a stop street. Or people will say that, what is it, the traffic fine for driving, for speeding on a specific road, and people will say the speed limit is like 200 rand. Then we know we have a serious problem of corruption. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do from the side of the Arrive Alive website. That is something that belongs to the domain of Road Traffic Management Corporation as the lead agency, and only they can address enforcement issues. Engineering, it's interesting, you know, South Africa has the 10th largest road network in the world, and our national roads are recognized as some of the best actually worldwide. It is more when you go off the national roads that we get into trouble. What we do with the Arrive Alive website is to create as much information as possible through close partnerships with corporate South Africa. Something a lot of the participants may not know is that the Arrive Alive website is not funded by the Department of Transport. We have been fortunate to have Road Accident Fund as a partner for the last 3 years, but apart from that, we fund this through partnerships with the private sector. not only helps us to provide the funding for the development, but also access to quality content. Yesterday, for instance, we shared some information from Netcare. We often share information from the AA. We often share information from In3TC. And just as a quick example, for instance, on the In3, people may wonder, listen, these route markers, what is it all about? The In3 toll route concessionaire, for instance, provides us with valuable information to share with our audience and to provide that information to them on what do you need to do when you are in a road crash, why is these road markers so important? What perhaps also, are we successful in what we're doing? We can always do better. But I'm proud to say that last year we had about 1.8 million user sessions on the Arrival Live website, according to Google Analytics, and we have a Twitter following of 195,000 following. So the audience that we reach can be significant. If those were the only people finding information, we would also be failing. It's very important for us to get information to an audience, whether it is a teacher, whether it is a corporate company, a safety officer, a health and safety officer, or a journalist, so that they can get the information out there much, much wider. Also, for the last 2 years, I must say, and I think Eugene will talk about it a little bit later, we have developed about 60 animations on various aspects of road safety. We just did one last week together with MasterDrive on, for instance, the dangers of distracted driving. We did have an animation on avoiding distractions while driving, but we decided in this one it's important to focus a little bit more just on the cellular phone distractions. I remember a few years ago, before the smartphones, you used to get an SMS and we warned people not to return an SMS while we're behind the wheel or to send the SMS. But now we have smartphones with Facebook Messenger, we have WhatsApps, we have direct Twitter messages, we have emails on our phones. There's so many more distractions that we need to be alert of. And I have agreed also with Eugene that we will make all these animations available to the participants to share within their companies to use for driver training, so that we can get a much, much bigger audience. Perhaps also it's important that we focus on, we've had all the statistics. We know what the problems are and why we refer to it as killing roads. The bit that we need to try to change is the human behavior on our roads. And our basic focus is to say that no person should not know. We should not say that they did not know that this was wrong. If somebody wants to know how do I tow a trailer safely, we will find the information. If we find roadworks still perhaps during the festive season, we will have information available on safe driving in areas of road construction. So the Arrival Live website is actually an effort by ourselves, a team of 3, together with a lot of corporate partners, to try and make as much information available as possible, so that people should not say that they did not know. Perhaps important for us from the road safety side, I did an interview a bit earlier with RSG on what do we expect during December, what would be the most important points to consider. And I want to plead with everyone to get the message across that we need to be defensive on the roads. We always refer to the best way to reduce road crashes, road deaths, would be to focus on the low-hanging fruits. If we can address pedestrian safety, and if we can address the wearing of seatbelts, we will already significantly reduce road deaths. Pedestrians, every year we find about 55 to 40% of our fatalities are pedestrian deaths. So it's very important that we focus during the festive season, also because the schools are out and our child pedestrians are much more likely to be close to the roads, to focus on safe driving in areas of pedestrian activity, to slow down, to ensure that we check around our cars even when we start the car in the driveway. We have an animation as well on the child pedestrians. Go have a look. Let's share it to a much wider audience. Also, another thing is wearing of seatbelts. You know, a paramedic once told me that they very seldom have to unbuckle a dead person after a road crash. It is true that seatbelts do save lives. I'm sometimes amazed that I once had from a prominent magazine, a deputy editor asked me, but is it not only the front passengers who are obliged by law to wear a seatbelt? And I thought to myself, you know, we accept that people are all aware of the seatbelt laws. By law, every person in the vehicle must wear a seatbelt, and children below the ages of 3 must be in a car seat. So please ensure that everyone in your company or all your friends are buckled up, no matter how short or slow the drive. So those are the most important bits. For all the other information, we will work closely with our partners with MasterDrive as well to make information available to ensure that it reaches as wide an audience as possible. And that, Eugene, that's our focus.
Johan, thank you very much. Short and succinct, and I appreciate the privilege of having you address us. And please understand, everyone, that Arrival Live is an NPO. They don't make any money out of this. And so when they produce the range of video animations, and please, if you would like, go to the MasterDrive website. You can get them there. You can download all of them. They're available free of charge because they advocate road safety. Just going back for a moment, Leighton mentioned a figure of 95% RTMC, human behavior. That's not just the RTMC, folks. International best practice tells us that 95% of crashes are as a result of human behavior. So it's you and I that need to take the lead. Let's now hand over to MJ, and I've already seen parts of what he's done, what he's going to share with us. So let's enjoy that.
Many thanks. Thank you very much to the forum, Eugene and company. Just want to confirm, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you very much. All right, I'll keep this as short as what I am, so I won't take up too much of your time. Today, my portion of the forum is to touch on everything that is before you get on the road and after you safely arrived at your destination. So the points I want to cover today is merely a little bit of a reminder on the small things that we take for granted every day in our daily lives, and the small things that we overlook that actually creates bigger risks from a security perspective. So the first thing I just want to highlight is actually how the evolution of security has taken place over the years. Some of you have got some of this in place and some not. It started with a dog in your house. Some of us got some fences, even security officers in our homes and office parks, fences, armed response, fire and alarm systems in our homes. Some of us have got some CCTV surveillance, detailed access control in our estates and homes, which is in the majority of time monitored remotely at a control room or an alarm monitoring center somewhere. But before we actually get to the reaction teams or the security to your estate, your office or your house, what we do need to keep in mind is our own safety at our premises, at our home. And the questions that we need to ask ourselves is, what type of security do I require? What is it going to protect? Do I really need it? For the ones that like to swipe the credit card on Black Friday or closer to the end of year, where a lot of different companies offers great seemingly specials to add security to your house. And ultimately, what will the cost be to actually install it? Because buying a bargain online and actually installing it to manage a risk at your property is two different scenarios. So saving the money today might cost you in the long run. Just a couple of tips and a couple of points to think about. And this is all very logical, but we see it on a daily and weekly and monthly basis with our armed response companies that we form part of, our cash in transit business, our monitoring and response, our technology, and also our manned guarding business. And the most popular one is car jamming at this current point in time. We see it so often. We had one of our colleagues in the last 24 hours being a victim of that as well. The beep doesn't mean that your car is locked. So please, when you walk away from your car, make sure that the vehicle is actually locked. It's not to say that when you've actually armed the vehicle as you walk away, that the boot and the doors are closed. And that's where a lot of the jamming comes in. The beep can go through, but the locking mechanism might not. I do want to raise the point of social distancing, especially in light of COVID. We're seeing it so often now, being in the front line, delivering security services, that it is everyone's responsibility, from the person that you interact with, but it ultimately starts with yourself. Very logical point is actually keep in mind that when you stop for a bite to eat, and we all do it, and you get to a restaurant, you start relaxing, especially now during the festive period, take out your mobile phone, your handbag, maybe the shopping that you did, and you leave it out for everyone to see. Just remember, just as what you and your family or your friends are seeing your goods, your valuables, so is potential perpetrators and someone that actually would like your Samsung or your iPhone for a Christmas gift on their side. So please keep in mind, don't leave your phone on the edge of the table out for everyone to see while you're busy Facebooking, Twitter, checking in at the restaurant where you are. Please do take care of your valuables. And then the last point on this is when you leave the shopping center, get your keys out before you go to your car. And we've seen it now in a couple of incidents, especially in the Gauteng area more recently, where people are actually attacked, or even their goods, their groceries, whatever they just purchased, being stolen in the time that they put it down and trying to find the keys to their vehicle. Very simple tip, please keep it in mind. I started the presentation with regards to a budget, and it's always easy to say, oh, I want to install the best and greatest of security protection for my house. Think about, and one of the questions that I said, do you really need it, and what is it going to do? So fortifying doors and windows is literally the simplest and the quickest way of actually adding a little bit of a deterrent to your premises. A very widely missed point is actually your outside, your warehouse, your garage access. If it's not a direct entrance into your house or to your property, usually we don't lock these areas. We leave the warehouse with just a simple little lock with the wood not being treated, so anyone can literally break the lock open, or your garage doesn't have an alarm on it. It's so easy to go in and take items that can assist burglary in your property. A ladder, a tin of paint maybe that can be used to break a window or to gain access to the roof. So you will be surprised on how many of properties that is burgled, items from their own yard is actually being used during these break-ins. Guarding your keys. So often everyone walks into your house, and take yourself tonight when you get home. Where do you actually put your house keys, and where do you put your car keys before you go to bed or before you have dinner? So often we actually leave them in sight. Anyone that walks past the window, whether it's the garden service, whether it's your neighbor, depends on who it might be or what your position is at your residence. But leaving keys in a central place, number one, and also in line of sight is so often the easiest way to gain access, without a window being broken, without much physical damage being done to a property. So think where you put your keys and how easy it is to see them, visibility, and also to actually get hold of them. Because once you are in the property, or once you've got access to a key holder or key safe, what will they get? Not only your house, your car keys, etc., etc. The most basic of basics is having your alarm system installed, but not only installing an alarm, but actually having it connected to an armed response, or actually an audible alarm, at least a siren, that your neighbors can at least react when there is an alarm at your property. Silent alarms is great to make sure that your grandmother doesn't wake up when the alarm sounds, but it is to the detriment of your house, your goods when you're not there, if you don't have an audible or at least a response connected to your alarm system. Just a quick overview on where the actual popular points is of entry. And again, think about your own property. This evening, when you would like to have a beer or a glass of wine on your patio, your porch, overlooking your lapa or your swimming pool area, usually our front areas are secured very highly. We've got big wooden doors with high quality and high grade locking mechanisms to ensure that no one can visit us unexpectedly through our front door. But so often in the area where we like to entertain and relax, we've got very limited security in place. So often we see that in people's backyards, electric fence might be in the front, but not at the back. No boundary beams. In other words, if someone jumps over the wall, you can still have your dogs playing, you can still enjoy a braai, you can still enjoy a pool party, but by having boundary beams, at least you'll be notified if someone comes in, and also your security company. It's important to actually take note and ask yourself the question, what is the security at the back of your house, your property, really like? And then a very important point through all, everyone going on holiday these days enjoy to send a tweet on Twitter, check in on Facebook, post photos of how much groceries they could fit or how much shopping they could fit into the back of their vehicle before they go on holiday. Ask yourself the question, who is seeing you packing up for holiday? Who is actually, that's just passing in the road? Who's actually befriending you on Facebook, following you on Instagram and Twitter, and has now noted that, okay, you are leaving today, you are now halfway to KZN, to the beach, and you've now safely arrived. At least giving them a 24, 48 plus hours access to your property. And really do think about the social responsibility that you have while you are traveling wherever this festive season. As a last one, we always have a bit of doom and gloom when we listen to our security statistics being given at the end of a year. But I just want to paint a little bit of a more holistic festive season picture. So what you are seeing on the screen at the moment is information up to October/November this year for reported crimes. I do want to make the point that reported crimes is to a CIRO or SAHITSA registered security organization or to the police or military force. The important one to see here is how the crime statistics have changed actually over the years. And I'd just like to touch on where increases was in 2020 so that we are realistic and cognizant when we take on our holiday period on where the up in crime is. Murder, sexual offences, and I want to touch at the bottom on also sexual offences detected by police action has shown an increase. Assaults, robbery, aggravated assaults, those are the crimes that's on the increase. So keep in mind this festive season, when you go out, when you go about, ask yourself the question, how many people have I told? How secure is my property? And what effort have I taken from a personal perspective to ensure the safety of myself, my family, and the people around me? Thank you, Eugene, and the forum, and have a blessed festive season.
MJ, thank you very much. I just wanted to ask a question on those statistics that you released there. Was state capture included or not? We could probably have that discussion offline. So now we'd like to...
Sorry, I do want to just an interesting comment to that, Eugene. You will note here at the bottom, commercial crime is actually on the increase. So it is because it is reported, it is actually on the increase to other years.
Yeah, thank you. But go out and catch them, please. Do your job. Thanks, MJ. We'll catch up for questions at the end. Neo, thank you very much for joining us. There's some really pragmatic thoughts that you can share with us. So we hand over to you now. Thank you very much, Neo.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Hi, everyone. Please let me know if you can see the screen as yet. Okay, yes. Okay, let me just put that on. Sure. Can this person, sorry.
We're able to see your screen share.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you so much. Sorry. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to share my experiences around the topic. Around this time, all you think about, or most of us, what we think about is just money, money, money. So the festive season, is it a time to spend or save? So this is a question that I also ask myself, because you've been working so hard the whole year, and with everything else that has actually happened or transpired this year, you just want to relax and enjoy your hard-earned money. I thought I'd just share briefly on what the 2020 financial expectation is from an economic perspective. According to Stats SA, they're expecting the South Africans to spend about 210 billion in the 2020 festive season. So obviously that's so good for the economy, because we'll be pumping into the economy, but that 210 billion is your money and is your money and my money. And normally we spend on food, beverages, gifts, and on travel, etc. So there's also another survey that was done by Wonga. Wonga is a short-term lender just recently. And what they actually picked up is this year, when they compared to 2019, the previous year, they are predicting a slight decrease of about 15% this year. Obviously, this is mainly due to the COVID-19 crisis that we had and the national lockdown. So about 56% of the people they surveyed said that they think that they'll spend less this festive season. So that's actually something to think about. And when you think about it, COVID-19, most of us, or where the stats or where the information comes from, is most people have less money now. There's also a fear of going out and of traveling, especially now with talks of a second wave. Some people want to save money, and others just don't feel celebratory at this stage. So I thought, let's look at a little bit of trends overall, how people spend their money, or how things normally look around this time. And if you would have also noticed, what it actually started a little bit earlier this year, now that I think about it, aggressive retail marketing. Obviously, because everyone has not really had, from a business perspective, we didn't have a lot of food flow. You would have seen, especially around this time, a lot of aggressive retail marketing, so that we all, as consumers, go and shop and spend our money. And normally, because we spend a lot of money, we have a lot of extra expenditure this time. People, or most of us, the consumers, we use the following to sort of bridge the gap. Most people will be receiving their bonuses and 13th checks. Ooh-wee. Some people will dip into their savings, which is actually a good thing. Some people rely on stokvels, which is actually a growing trend, where, stokvels, you save and then you get either meat or cash injection or whatever really that you would have planned for. Some people then are planning on taking short-term loans, your mashonisas and your normal short-term loans as well. Others will be increasing your credit cards. Obviously, from a financial institution, you want more people to come and take money from the institution. However, what we normally see as well, around the 31st, or on the 1st or the 2nd, because the 1st is a public holiday, a lot of debit orders will be rejected, mainly due to poor planning, or you just went with the December mode and just started spending and living beyond your means in December. What's also very prevalent is the black tax burden. And I mentioned this because amongst most of us, when we go home in the festive season, there's the expectation that because you are home, you now need to spend. There's, your family members are expecting you to, shop groceries, expecting you to take them out to buy clothes, all these other expectations. And then obviously then there'll be the January if there isn't proper planning in place. So a little bit of tips that I thought, we could look at. It's things that when you think about, you can actually practice every day, but sometimes we don't really think about it, especially around this time. We just want to spend. I'm actually a very thrifty person in my family, but yeah, my family members are not as thrifty as I am. The first thing you can do is to kill that debt that you have. So that extra bonus, that extra 13th check that you've received, rather start, instead of going and buying, very, very expensive things or shopping, till you drop, rather close that Foschini account that you have, your small debts, rather close the credit card that you have with Woolworths or whoever, rather do that. Also something that I've actually picked up, check your credit reports frequently. So this also helps should you decide in January you want to lend, or around this time you also want to lend, at least know what's going on in your credit report. Because sometimes you come through, you request lending and you sort of don't know that, TV licenses or whoever has put a negative status on your credit report. And also because your debit orders bounced, that also does impact your credit record as well. So it's very important to check that frequently. Also, as a family, distinguish between your wants and needs. Especially around this time, it's a luxury to actually go buy a 7,000 wig. You don't necessarily need to go buy at Woolworths. You can go shop at Checkers, even though we do like Woolworths. Sorry, I'm just saying in terms of needs and wants. You don't really need to buy your child a hoverboard or that iPad. My daughter already asked for a hoverboard. I told her no, it's not happening. So I think as a family, manage those expectations and just let them know in advance, what you can buy and what you will buy because they need it. And then a budget. I think this is like so important. Around this time, even going, throughout the year, it would actually help you or help most of us to do this. Keep a separate bank account for debit orders. So you now have extra funds or whatever that you have, that my debit orders are 20,000, for instance. Then you know that it's secured in the check account. You don't touch it. The debit orders will go through and you don't even have to worry about it. Then you keep a separate entertainment budget for the family, whether in a pure save or a savings account. Then it is there. And even for school, January is coming. You put 20,000, registration is coming, your children needs to go to school, then it is safely there. So it's very, very important to budget and keep separate accounts for certain things or certain financial obligations. Save for the festive season. You see, this is something that I actually started doing a long time ago, because as the elderly child at home, obviously there's the expectation that I need to sort of give out a little bit of money or do certain things within the family. So from January, I already start saving. I either put it in a 32 days notice deposit or I fix it, then I know December or November, then I put in my notice, December I have a lump sum, or January I have a lump sum. Like I said, instead of buying expensive gifts, rather invest or save. Even for the kids, you will not believe, I've already started teaching my 8-year-old daughter. She has her own someone account. If she wants to spend anything, then she uses her card. It also teaches her the value of money. It also teaches her financial literacy right now as she is growing. So I think it's also something, instead of just buying, because that's what we do normally around this time. We just pump our kids with gifts, expensive gifts, even though we do, sometimes deserve it. But it's also very, very important to teach them while they're young, to teach them to save and to wait. And I think generally it's been a very, very difficult year, and we don't know what will be coming out in the year 2021. Last one. Hi, Eugene. Last one is wait for sales in December. So this is something that I've actually, I do this myself. Instead of shopping now when, there's the urge to buy and everything is still at the 100%, I wait until there's sales. And around after Christmas, we all know it. I don't know why we don't shop then. We all know that, we will have discounted items all in January. So even my family knows. I guess it's because I love money so much. Wait until December. You wait. Then in that way, you grow your money. Thanks, Eugene. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much for sharing those helpful tips. I must just admit, it's the first time, and everybody can tell me whether they agree with me or not, that I've had a banking institution admit to the fact that you must go and take money from them. Yeah, it's an opportunity. Yeah. So, folks, let's just start over there. I just want to. Okay, so let's. Okay, what I'd like to share with you, and as alluded to at the outset of our presentation, the fact that distracted while driving, and this has been reiterated in all the discussions so far, has devastating effects on people who are using our roads. Now, what we have chosen to do, and please, I'm just going to put the disclaimer there right up front, we're not intending to stereotype women as being addicts with regard to phones, but we've built this around a fictional character, Addict, who says to me, please tell me about distracted driving and what makes it so dangerous. The email address, if any of you would like to respond to it, is stupid@distracteddriving.idiot.gravesite.com. So let's answer the question then. Distracted while driving really is associated with something many people are proud of, that of multitasking. The fact is that multitasking is a misnomer. It is impossible for us to do two equally important things simultaneously. And when we have a look at how the brain works, it handles tasks sequentially, and its inability to swap effectively between one task and another, particularly when it comes to driving, is what creates it as hazardous to individuals who are engaging in this practice. So, hello again. Surely hands-free is okay, because we know that it is legal for a person to use a cell phone as long as it's on hand-free, and it isn't really dangerous. And the comment is, drunken driving under the influence is far worse. Well, what do the statistics tell us? TRL in the UK tells us that drivers' reactions, and please take note of this, were slowed by 35%, whilst if one looked at the normal level of, or the acceptable level of BAC levels, would only be 12%. But notice that graph on the right-hand side, that infographic, the likelihood of a crash. Now, please, let's not understand and not try to minimize the seriousness of drinking and driving. And there's no way that any person here, any organization present on the forum would agree with that. But let's put it into context. Something that we think is safe is patently unsafe. Let's have a look at some of the statistics that we look at. Sorry, just go through over there. People on average, and this is international research, check their phones something like 150 times a day. Why don't you, as an interesting stat, do it for yourself, assess it on occasion. 88% of people, of drivers, check for messages. Now, when we start talking about hands-free and also about SMSing and WhatsApp, you'll notice the importance of it. Now, when it's one of the more dangerous things that we have to start identifying is the fact that 23%, a person is 23% times more likely to be involved in a crash when they engage in some or other form of distracted activity, which lands up in a 94% crashes being preventable. Now, Leighton mentioned, and we agreed with the figure, whether it's 94 or 95%, human behavior can alter the effects of something. Now, that is something that you and I have control. So let's just have a look at the three types of distractions that people normally associated with it. The first one, they would think of it as visual, when the eyes are taken off the road. And if you follow the popular number of 2 seconds, please, the research tells us the total distracted time that one has one's eyes off the road or mentally impacted is up to 5 seconds. So there's the visual component. There's the manual, one hand off the steering wheel while you're dialing with the other or messaging. And then the third and the most important one is the cognitive component. And I'll refer you in a moment to a discussion on cognitive dissonance, and you'll appreciate why this is so important. Just have a look at this slide for a moment when we look at texting. Have a look at the things that we've underlined in the cell phone over there. Brake reaction times are slower. Lane positions vary. Miss lane changes and following distances. And in fact, here's an irony. Many people who, when they're engaging in some type of distracted while driving activity, lead or allow more distance behind them in the vehicle in front. And that speaks to a subject which is a totally different discussion of risk homeostasis. People compensate. But have a look at that picture on the right-hand side. And what I want to draw your attention to is there in the top left-hand corner. Let's talk about that as a hazard. Now, if a person's eyes are focused on the cell phone, certainly they're not going to detect the hazard, which would have resulted in the driver in front braking and therefore their inability to see brake lights. So there's one simple indication of how dangerous it is. What about though cognitive dissonance? And I want you to have a look at this, please, because we speak so often of the fact that people know that it's dangerous. Just as with seatbelts, they know that you should wear a seatbelt. All the facts prove the advantages. But cognitive dissonance is when we lie to ourselves and we deny the truth. The individuals who say, yes, it's unsafe for you to use a cell phone, but it is not for me. Now, that also comes down to a subject that we speak about fairly frequently of risk ignorance. And if I can just draw the difference, the comparison between risk ignorance and risk arrogance. Risk ignorance is if you don't know something and you go ahead and do it. If you didn't know that seatbelts save life because you've never seen them, and you then were involved in a crash, that's ignorance. But when you deliberately choose, despite all the information and knowledge to the contrary, to not wear a seatbelt, that is risk arrogance. And sadly, we see that when it comes to cell phone usage. Do you want to be the one that tells that child's mom that you only look down for a second, when in actual fact, and we know it can be 5 seconds. In the interest of time, I'm going to not play this video. It's only a 2.5 minutes video. I would just like to tell you what it was. We use a technology called impairment goggles that a driver then puts on, and we use it to demonstrate what happens when your vision goes blank for any period of up to 5 seconds. This was a series of exercises we conducted, and the video is available for you to share freely. But now let's move on to what we want to speak about to addict again. Is there anything that can be done to help an addict? You know, Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is where we introduce a product that we launched last month, No Cell. I'm glad you asked. What we've done, and the video that explains this is on our website if you go and have a look at it. We accept that cell phones are important. They're an everyday part of our lives, and there's got technology that can work. Trevor from Cortiva made a post of a comment previously or earlier on today that some of the employees have been found using Zoom. Now, what's nice about the technology, it allows you to use it safely. And if you have a look at the phone, that's typically what you would see. Once you engage this application, and we can tell you more about it, you see what it does to all those unnecessary applications that while you're driving, they cannot be used. But something like Google Maps, for example, would still be available. Please, we encourage you to view that video on our website, and you'll notice how deliberate it is with regard to ensuring that we can use technology responsibly. And it speaks to two issues: improving driver safety and in an organization enforcing driver policy. So Trevor, if you want something that can enable you to prevent your employees using Zoom, well, come and talk to us with the greatest of pleasure. But here's the addict again. I get not talking, but those SMSs are impossible to ignore. Have a look at this. Can you relate to that? She got off lightly. And just by the way, when we speak about ARTO, the implementation of ARTO will only see one demerit point for using a cell phone while driving. And that's something I think that we should vehemently oppose. Let's have a look, though, at this scenario. That person got off lightly.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds.
Sadly, speak to any of the organizations that are represented here today, and that is the reality of what we see. So it is possible to ignore these. Let's have a look.
You have a new text message from husband. Are you almost home? I need reinforcements.
Hey, close with the birthday groom?
You have a new Facebook message from Carly Realtor. Congrats on selling the house on Willow Avenue.
You are in drive mode. You have a new WhatsApp message from Peter Boss. Team meeting confirmed for 5:30 p.m. today. You have a new email from dispatch. Updated delivery address is 224 Main Street. You are in drive mode.
I trust that those brief videos have showed you that there is an option. We do not have to be dictated to by our cell phone, and I invite you to go and look at our website at the end of this. And in conjunction with Arrive Alive and the phenomenal database that he's got, we will be making available from the 14th of December, so it's next week, for a period of 2 weeks, that application entirely free of charge. The intention is that we would like every road user who has the need to have a cell phone to eliminate that urge for them to check that cell phone when a message comes through. What this does in effect, and this is a bit of sell on the product, it translates all messages, emails included, into a voice message, therefore obviating the need for you to have to respond. It enables you to pass on directions and any other important message. And if you have a look in the middle of the screen there, it talks about the future is voice. So please, when we start looking at what we need to do by way of ensuring that individuals, ourselves, our employees, follow the rules and policies, let's give them an alternative. Because if we say no to distracted driving, we can be part of a movement that will ensure that we contribute toward minimizing the number of fatalities and crashes that are on our road as a result of the misuse of cell phones. And we trust that possibly in 2021, we can have a look at a newspaper heading that says 0 deaths on South African roads as a result of the misuse of cell phones. If you'd like more information, please let us know, and we would be more than happy to share with you. That then brings us to the end. And if I can just have the last leaving comment on that particular subject, distracted while driving is one of the most dangerous things that you could ever engage in. So please do not you or let anyone in your family or in your company accept that they are the exception and that the rule applies to everybody else. Cognitive dissonance and risk arrogance is what most people carry forward. So that brings us to a conclusion of all the presentations, but we would like to open it up to questions. All the participants have stayed. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions that were tabled before. Ari from Kwaza raised the question to Leighton. Besides having figures of road deaths, are these figures available for disablement from road crashes and deaths in hospital post-crashes?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Yeah, hi, thank you, Eugene. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. The answer is yes and no. I think when you look at the breakdown of the cost of crashes, there is a figure there of serious injury that it costs the economy, and that's 423 million annually, and then slight injuries 11.3 million a year annually. So the answer to your question is there is a figure that's attached to it, and obviously those figures would need to be extrapolated for 2020. So when I speak of 423 million, I think that cost is probably higher to 500 million. But the point I think you make is very important, and that is that a fatality is not only a problem for obviously the person who has died, but it's more of an issue for the people who are left behind. From a financial perspective, they are the ones that are going to suffer, because many times we see that the person who has died in a vehicle accident, in a vehicle crash, is perhaps the breadwinner of that family. And then when that person is either deceased or unable to work, that family is going to suffer quite severely financially. So that figure, just in wrapping up the question, is around about 550 million annually.
Thank you very much. Another one for you, Leighton, so don't run away, from Shakira at Shell. And I'm going to preempt part of your comment, Leighton. I know you're going to say that driver training is part of the answer. She asks, what can we do as a collective to influence those behaviors and choices made by our drivers?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think part of the answer is we've got to set the example ourselves. So we've got to drive, obviously, within the rules of the road. We've got to make sure that we are almost beyond reproach. And I know nobody's an excellent driver. Nobody's a perfect driver, although obviously, as I said in my presentation, we'd all like to believe we are. But I think the first step is to set that example, and specifically for youngsters who are in the car, even those that aren't at driving age, because they will pick up habits as they get older. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is that we've got to push and advocate for the things that we think are important. We've got to push for better education in schools. If your child is in a school and there is no driver education or road education program that's in that school, you've got to be asking the question, but why not? What are we doing to educate our children about using the road, not only as motorists, but also as pedestrians? And I think Johan mentioned this very pertinently. Pedestrians are a huge problem in terms of road fatalities. So the roads belong to not only motorists, but to people who use bicycles and motorbikes and pedestrians. So you've got to be asking, what are we doing in terms of education? We've got to be pushing that things like drunk driving and distracted driving are dealt with more harshly by the courts. We've got to see justice being done. And one of the things that we at the AA advocate for is harsher penalties for offenders. So as citizens, we've got to be saying, but where are those harsh penalties? What exactly are you doing? And this is something that we've got to raise on social media. We've got to be raising these issues in private conversations. We've got to be raising these issues. And then lastly, I think as citizens, what we've got to be doing is we've got to be calling out bad behavior where we see it. And I know this is a terrible thing to say, and I know I'm probably going to get quite a lot of blowback on this. But when we've got family and friends, and we see them and they don't have children in child restraint systems, or they're driving without their seatbelts, or we know that they are serial cell phone users while they're driving, we've got to call this type of behavior out and say, but hang on a second, this isn't right. Not only is it illegal, but it's super dangerous. And I'm not going to allow my child to get in a car with you. I'm not going to allow you to carpool with my kids because, that's what the school expects or that's what friends expect. We've got to be driving ourselves to that behavior. And then as Eugene prefaced, I think, just driver education. That's really where we've got to be. I think that answers it, Eugene.
Thanks, Leighton. If I can just add my 2 cents worth, you reiterate the importance of setting a good example. And that's what Gandhi had to say, really. It's all very well saying to your kids or to other people, don't use the cell phone. But if you're driving using the cell phone and they see evidence of bad behavior, what are they going to emulate? And I think we need to set better examples for our children, particularly with regard to wearing the seatbelts and the like. Last question from Gareth Lombard at Denon, and it's directed at Johan. I've witnessed a driver of a driving school not wearing his seatbelt. I wanted to know, are driving schools vetted, and is there signage that one can look out for on a driving school vehicle that shows that they are legitimate? Johan, have you got a comment there for us, please?
Yes, Eugene, I think we need to report incidents of bad driving. There is actually some nice examples of the private sector, especially with company vehicles, where we've had good feedback. I remember one trucking company specifically where somebody indicated that the truck driver, crossed the red traffic light, and we shared with the owner of the company as well as with the Road Traffic Management Corporation, for instance, evidence of it, and they could go back into the dash cams and stuff to check that. And the owner actually said, thanks a lot, we call it like self-enforcement. I think everybody could use their networks, could use the media to help us to identify the transgressors so that we can remove those drivers from the road. So I'll definitely advise, if you come across something like that, you can also send us an email to info@arrivalive.co.za, and we will forward to the lead road agency, the Road Traffic Management Corporation, so they will at least get a letter to know that, listen, you have been identified as, for instance, not wearing your seatbelts, and they can take it from there.
Johan, thank you very much. Folks, in the interest of time, we've gone a little bit over, and please let not any of the speakers feel guilty about it. The information was really valuable. Any of the questions that we've got from any participants, we will mail directly to the other participants so that they can get an answer. And it's where it's relevant. If you'd like to contact us, we would more than happily share that. So let's get back to what makes our colloquiums more successful than many others. And you see 63 participants with about another 40 in YouTube. So really, it's something that we want to remind you, and I'll tell you in a moment when our next one is. We're giving away some prizes to Mkhana Precision Events. Have a look at our website, what it consists of. It's really exciting. It's a new product that we introduced, and I think we must get Leighton behind the wheel, and we'll see how good a driver he is. The two winners for that is John Taylor. John Taylor, we will get your voucher to you, and then Mornay van Jaarsveld, we will also get your voucher to you. Congratulations, and we trust that you will learn something from that. Then courtesy of G4S to some SD cards, Shakira Khan and Violetwa Matamo from Bala World Equipment. Please, we will also get those to you. So thank you very much to G4S for making those available. Then Arrive Alive, you see, just in the event of you involved in a crash, he's going to give you some first aid kits. The first winner, Mason Pillay. Second one, Elizabeth Fasagi. Third one, Tabang Moleti. Fourth one, Deborah Pretorius. And finally, Trevor Willemse from Cortiva. So folks, it's a big thank you from me. Thank you for all the presenters. We're going to run some rolling credits at the end. If you'd like to see those videos, those animations that Johan spoke about, they will be at the end. So please hold on. And any information you want, please feel free to call us, and we will happily have you with us. Our next event is February 2021. And it's going to be under the heading, under the theme, Lessons Learned 2020, Driving in 2021. So thank you for being present. Drive safely. Have a very good festive season, and may all the best wishes be to you and your family.
Thanks, Eugene. Cheers.
have a new text message from husband. Are you almost home? I need reinforcements.
Hey, close with the birthday girl?
You have a new Facebook message from Carly Realtor. Congrats on selling the house on Willow Avenue.
You are in drive mode. You have a new WhatsApp message from Peter Boss. Team meeting confirmed for 5:30 p.m. today. You have a new email from dispatch. Updated delivery address is 224 Main Street.